get a lot of questions asking me about the P principle. P stands for point, evidence, and explanation. Now, where does the P principle come from? Well, firstly, it's a global kind of recommendation, an academic best practice. It's not invented by NEBOSH. Why do we use it in our NEBOSH assessments? Well, NEBOSH last year released some guidance. It's now out of date. It's now changed a bit, but in that guidance, exam technique, the P principle. From that point onwards, me and a lot of other people made a big deal out of the P principle and started telling our students, listen, it's in the NEBOSH guidance, use the P principle, point, evidence, explanation. This is how you structure your answers, because that's kind of what they want in order for you to demonstrate your understanding and so you can get the marks. But then they took it out. Have a look here, this is a new guidance. No P principle. It's kind of still in there, it just doesn't have a big page all to itself. I mean, I'm not in the know as to why NEBOSH decided to take it out, but I guess that a lot of people did what I've seen them do, which is they started to use it in a very fake way, in a very forced way, in a very contrived way. And I've certainly seen a lot of people overthink it. So, sorts of things that I've seen. Let's take this question here. This is a Health and Safety at Work Act question. What are the breaches of the Health and Safety at Work Act Section 2? I've seen people do this kind of thing. The employer breached the duty to provide a safe place of work. Right, okay, so what's that? That's my point. Okay, that's my point. So now what do I have to do? I have to use evidence. Okay, yeah, evidence. Right. They allowed a trailing cable to go across the entrance of the spaceship, which then caused the astronaut to trip as they exited the craft, falling onto the Martian surface. Great, okay. Is that my evidence or my explanation? What is that? Is that evidence? It's evidence, yeah, it's evidence, but I'm kind of explaining something. Yeah, but I can't use the evidence as an explanation. I can't use the evidence as an explanation. I'm gonna have to provide another explanation. What explanation do I provide? I don't know, I'll just say, this is a breach of HASUA. Phew, I just gave an explanation. Oh my goodness, I can't. In another world, there's a NEBOSH examiner doing this. Right, so the employer breached the duties for the same place of work. Right, so tick that. That's my point. Right, what have they given here? Right, very good. That is the explanation. And no, that's the explanation there. Okay, I see. So that's the explanation. Then this here is the evidence. Okay, that's the evidence, right? We have all three things. Everybody, we have all three things. I can now award 1 mark. No examiner's doing that. No examiner's doing that. No one cares. All they want you to do is for you to make your point and explain yourself. Like, make your point to a sufficient level of understanding, to the standard required. It's a level 3 qualification. It's like, this isn't an IOSH working safety test. Well, take this question here. Very standard, common question this. What are the financial arguments you could use to justify the health and safety improvements? You start the answer off with a list of things. Yeah, sick pay, fines, lost time, that kind of thing. And then you would have to explain those answers in full. But some people think they have to do this. Look at that, look. They have to put point, evidence, explanation. You see, you don't have to label your point and your evidence and your explanation. You see, there's no examiner in the world marking your exam thinking, red hit, oh dear, I can't see where the point, evidence or explanation start or end. No examiner's doing that. They don't care. They can tell where your point, evidence, explanation are. But let's look a little bit deeper at this one. So this is quite funny because there's yet another way of overthinking the P principle here. We look at this. We've got a point. Yeah, we've got the sick pay, reduce it sick pay. Great. Evidence, sickness absence is rising. Great. Except here on point number 2, we've got evidence, sickness absence is rising. Can you see that? We've used, oh my goodness me, we've used the same evidence twice. This is where I get emails from students furiously typing, "Dear Will, is it okay if I use the same evidence twice in my answers. If you're asking questions like, can I use the same evidence twice in my answers? You are probably overthinking the P principle, and you need to pack that in right now. Gets worse and worse on this. Look at the repetition in the answer. Implementing these proposals would reduce the sickness absence and the sick pay. Implementing these proposals would reduce the sickness absence and increase hours worked. And people are like, but the explanation for my second point is nearly the same as my first point. Like, oh, does that mean I'm gonna lose a mark? Stop overthinking the P principle. Right, let me just say something really, really blunt. You don't have to use the P principle. It's just a tool. It's just a tool to help you answer the question. You have to answer the damn question. That's all you have to do. You have to answer the question and demonstrate understanding. You see, what NEBOSH say in their exam instructions, which are really clear if you read them carefully, you will get a mark for each unique correct technical point. So you get a mark for each correct technical point, and the points have to be unique. So you don't get the same mark again and again and again for saying the same thing lots of different times. Clearly demonstrated, which means that you have to kind of explain yourself a bit. And the instructions also talk about how you have to show a connection with the scenario. You have to show your understanding, demonstrate understanding by having a connection with the scenario. Now, when you put all that together, it's kind of asking for a P principle, but you don't have to phrase it like this. Let me show you a different way of doing this. Move that down, and let's write a new answer. We could say the space agency could reduce its sick pay, which must be increasing because the sickness absence is rising. There we go, that'll do. That'll get you a mark, provided sick pay is on the marking scheme, of course. Can you see how we've made a point? You could reduce your sick pay. Great. And there we've got the reference to the scenario. So that's like a bit of evidence, if you want to call it evidence. NEBOSH don't call it evidence. You know what NEBOSH say? They say you should support your answer, where applicable, with relevant information from the scenario. So let's just stop calling it evidence. Let's just call it relevant information from the scenario. And notice there isn't much of an explanation there, but it's enough. You know, because the question's just asking, what are the financial arguments you could use to justify the health and safety improvements? And one of the financial arguments is that you could reduce your sick pay, which must be increasing because sickness absence is rising. Can you see how simple that is? All you have to do is answer the question in plain, sensible English. You see, this is the thing. People think that, and I hear this every day, they seem to think that you need to express yourself in a certain way, that you need to answer the questions in a certain way or you won't get the marks. You have to use magic words or a magic formula or you won't get the mark. And I'm sorry, but NEBOSH really aren't interested in your magic words or your magic formulas. They just want you to answer the question. Let's try another one down here. What's this? Increased productivity. So let's give that one a bash, shall we? Let's make some room for that. We'll say the agency could increase its productivity. Now, I'm not particularly worried about using the same evidence twice. I'm not fussed. No examiner cares about that. But I do think we don't want to just repeat the same thing again and again and again. Implementing the proposals would. Implementing the proposals. Here's the thing. It's like, you want to be a health and safety professional, you have to learn how to communicate. You have to learn how to write. You're going to be sending a lot of emails, writing reports, doing risk assessments, doing audits. You're going to have to learn to write eloquently and persuasively. Let's just write as we might speak. The agency could increase its productivity, which is probably low due to the high levels of sickness absence. Done. That's all. Notice I've used the same evidence twice. And I've even phrased it in a slightly different way. Let's get rid of all that nonsense in the middle there, because that's absolute garbage, that is. Done. I've kind of used sickness absence twice, but I've made two completely separate points. You see, that's all we have to do. Why do I hammer the P principle in a lot of our tutorials? Well, quite simply because it's a tool. It's a very useful tool. It's a great tool for people who need some kind of structure around which to write an answer. You could put evidence first, an explanation second, and the point at the very end if you want to. It's not very clear, to be fair, but you can do that and you can still get the marks. And in some cases, you might not even need evidence. Let me give you an example of where you don't even need evidence. Let's do another argument here. A generic financial argument might be something like HSE research indicates that the uninsured costs of incidents are between 8 to 36 times higher. Maybe we should explain a little bit more, link it back to the improvements up here. We could say something like implementing the improvement. What the? That doesn't. Implementing the measures will significantly reduce those uninsured costs. That's great. Look, notice there isn't any evidence from the scenario in there, and it'll probably get a mark, assuming that's on the marking scheme. But the rest of the answer, right, on the whole, with these references to the scenario in various places, like the sickness absence there, the sickness absence there, the fact that we're talking about the space agency, there's loads of different ways you could refer to the scenario. You could reduce its sick pay by eliminating the trip hazards. Maybe there's a trip hazard in the scenario, in which case we could mention the trip hazards in the scenario. You could refer to the scenario regularly throughout your question, just chuck it in a bit of relevant information here, there and everywhere, and the examiner will think, that's wonderful, you've explained yourself, it's connected to the scenario, you can get the marks easy peasy. Just remember, the P principle is just a tool. You don't have to use it, and whatever you do, don't misuse it.